Here, Harold. Everybody buckle up. You too, dear.
You're always starved.
Mom, will you play volleyball with us?
Only if I can win.
Did you call your mom before you left? She called the other day and wanted to talk to you.
Not to you.
No, never wants to talk to me.
Just because she can't remember your name doesn't mean she doesn't want to talk to you.
Be there in a minute. Sit back and relax.
You need?
Bring in a protector line.
Honey, we're going to have to cut the roof off to get you out, but you'll be just fine. Look, it'll only take a second. You'll feel a small vibration, and there'll be just a little noise like this. Okay?
Okay, up with the yellow. Come on, keep her. Release on the yellow. Okay, up with the red one. Okay, up with the yellow too. Hold it. Release on the yellow one. Up with the red. Okay. Watch your back.
Okay, let's move it a little bit.
Okay. Ready? Easy, guys. Got her?
All right.
Okay, up easy with you. Up slightly.
I got your number in the computer. There's no response yet. I'll advise as soon as I get it. 46993, Bakersfield. Wait, 277. 69610 Bakersfield. 692010 route to DMV, Bakersfield.
Some demonstration.
Good.
Thanks for standing by.
Jeez, I've never seen anything like that. You guys got 6 people out of 2 wrecked vehicles in less than 12 minutes. And the way you handled the victims.
We get a lot of bad accidents in the city. You guys ever do any extricating?
Us? No, nothing like this. We're just a small town, mostly volunteers. We got a wrecker does the heavy stuff.
Yeah, some big clumsy ape and his kid. We think they killed a guy last month. Pulled him out of a wrecked car, through a window. You can't prove anything, though.
Our chief wants us to get more involved with auto rescue. We got some tools on order, but nothing like the stuff you got.
Yeah, that was some demonstration you guys put on down there.
Yeah, but it went too fast for us to follow. Want to run through it again?
Look, we're going to be here for a while. If you got a few minutes, I'll run over some of the procedures.
Hey, can we stick around?
You sure as hell can.
Okay. The first thing we do when we get to the scene of an accident is to stabilize the victim. We've got to stop any bad bleeding and make sure there's nothing obstructing their breathing. In this case, we didn't seem to have any of those problems.
What if any of the victims would have needed emergency first aid?
Then we would have had to smash some glass to get to the victims fast. We don't like doing that because people inside can get cut. But if it's a matter of life and death, we'll do it. Now, in addition to stabilizing the victims, we've also got to stabilize the vehicles. In this case, we've built a box crib out of wooden blocks which we always carry on our truck. We also could have stabilized the car by moving our vehicle against it and tying them together. We prefer the cribbing because it keeps our truck mobile. We would never, under any circumstances, shove a vehicle back on its wheels when there's people inside. We could do more harm to the victims than the collision did. Now, even if there's no indication of fire, we keep a man standing by with a charge line, just in case. Since we had you guys on the scene, we were able to extricate the victims a bit faster. If the car battery is easily accessible, we disconnect it by yanking or unbolting the cables. Cutting them can sometimes produce a spark which could ignite any gas that's leaking.
What if you can't get at the battery?
Then we don't waste any time with it. If it gives us any trouble, we've got a charge line ready.
What about the gas tank?
If it's leaking and we can easily get to the hole, we use some sealing clay. And we're always very careful with flares.
And if the tank's not leaking?
We just don't worry about it. Once the victims and vehicles are stabilized, we're ready to start extricating. If the vehicle is on its wheels or upside down, we take them out through the doors. If the vehicle is on its side, we take them out through the roof. Nobody gets pulled through windows. No how, no way. Before we start tearing into a car, we always try the door handles first. Sometimes, even after the worst collision, a door will still open normally. Usually they don't, especially with late model cars that have the steel safety latch.
Couldn't you unlock the door by breaking the glass and lifting the latch?
Even if the latch could be raised, the door might still be jammed shut. Then you've risked cutting your victims for nothing. Besides, with our tools, we can open any door in a matter of minutes, even if the roof's caved in. We usually lift the roof first. It makes it easier to get the doors open. We use a pry bar to peel back a little sheet metal so we can get the tools to bite in. Then we pop the door open, using either the power jaws or the porta-power wedge spreader combination.
I like the way those were color-coded.
Yeah, it really speeds the operation. The man positioning the tools doesn't have to think about the names of the tools. He just works by the color.
Okay, up on the red. Okay, up on the yellow too.
One of the pumpers keeps his butt pressed against the door,
Hold it.
so when the door pops loose, it doesn't jump out and smack one of us.
Okay.
Once we get the door open, we can widen the entry with either the power jaws or the come-along tool. As soon as it's convenient, we switch off the ignition, just an added measure of fire protection for the victims. These are scared, hurt people. They need all the help and comfort we can give them. I don't give a damn who caused the accident. Drunk or sober, stoned or straight, they're still people in trouble. Even the little things are important, like patting those kids' heads to reduce the vibrations on them when we cut the roof. We also try to protect the people outside the vehicles, the ones who are watching the extrication. They could be relatives of the victims. If there's a lot of blood and gore, or if any of the victims are dead, we cover them before we take them out. And we handle the body with the same care we use on a live person. Try to imagine how a child would feel seeing his dead mother pulled from a car like a side of beef. So we take a little more time and major traumas.
That was an air chisel, wasn't it, that you were using to slice through the roof of the red car?
Yeah, that's a special tool operating on 300 pounds of pressure. We also could have done the job with the jaws.
What about a power saw?
Well, we always carry one, and they're great for ventilation and non-auto extrication. But they produce a lot of sparks cutting sheet metal. If the saw's all you got, great, use it. But keep a fine water mist over the whole area.
What about a cutting torch?
Well, we carry those too, but they're too great a fire hazard for the average auto extrication. They're fine if you got a lot of heavy metal to cut, like a semi or a railroad car, but you don't need a torch to get into an automobile. Hell, and I'll probably use a can opener.
I noticed you only cut 3 sides of the roof.
Right. We fold the 4th side. Gives us a smooth edge to work over.
I like the way you only move the people on backboards.
Always. It's too easy to turn an inline fracture into a compound one.
Why the towel?
Makes a great temporary cervical collar. She looked like she might have had an injury.
It seemed like everyone came out fairly easily, except for the drivers.
Well, that's usually the case. They get pinned between the wheel and the seat. Their feet are often caught under one of the pedals. We know we're going to have to shatter glass to get them out, so we cover them with aluminized blankets, which also offer a fair amount of fire protection. Both drivers were trapped by the steering wheels. Since we had to pull both wheels, we had to break out both windshields. One was set in rubber, and we did what we're rarely able to do. After pulling off the wipers and slicing the rubber with a knife, we could just lift out the glass. The other windshield was set in mastic, which is more typical. We couldn't cut it loose, so we had to crack it with the bailing hook.
Wouldn't the air gun have been faster?
Sure, but it's not worth the hazard. That chisel throws slivers of glass all over the place. The bailing hook's slower, but not all that much. Once we cleared the windshield, we could use either the come-along or the power jaws to pull the wheel out of the driver's lap. With either tool, we fasten one end to a strong point on the front chassis. The other end goes low around the steering column. A lot of cars have tilt-up steering wheels. Now, if we get on the high side of the tilting joint, the steering wheel's liable to pop up and take some of the driver's teeth with it.
I noticed you used a lot of cribbing when you pulled the wheel.
That's to keep from collapsing the hood and to give a sharper lift angle to the wheel. Now, both drivers also had their feet caught under the pedals. In one car, we were able to lift the pedal with a porta-power. With the other, we used the power jaws. We also could have used the come-along. Next, we had to force back the driver's seats. We used the come-along tool in one of the cars. First, we attached one end to a strong point on the rear of the chassis. We had to bring the other end in through the rear window.
That was a neat technique for shattering the glass.
One sharp blow in the corner does the trick. We can get up to 4,000 pounds of pull with the come-along, enough to snap any seat loose. And the handle is designed to bend before the cable will break.
Support that neck good.
Not the neck?
In the other car, we had to unsqueeze the door pillars before we could slide the front seat back. We used a 4-ton ram to do that job. Then we used the power jaws to snap the seat brackets.
Man, what an incredible toolkit.
Sure, we use all of them, but we don't really need them all. We could probably get by with less than half of them. There's a lot more to extrication than tools. It's mainly common sense and just caring about people. I don't have to tell you guys about amateurs and thrill seekers pulling people out of cars and actually killing them in the process. Before we really get involved...
We're ready to leave.
Be right there. Well, so long, guys. Thanks for your help.
Hey, we got a lot more from you than you got from us.
Fair exchange. Take care.
You know, the chief's right.
How do you mean?
Extrication. It's not a job for amateurs. You really got to know what you're doing.
I'm a believer.
Hello, everybody. I'm Skip Alzheimer. Welcome to our lunchtime streaming event that we just watched, Collision Rescue. One of two films that I have of how to remove people, extricate people from cars that have crashed. This one is the better one because it has the jaws of life in it, and big fan. I noticed many of you likened this to Emergency, and our guest, switch over to him, Mark Quigley, also said, hey, that's like emergency, and wanted to know is that the LAPD or the LA Fire Department? And sure enough, it was. Welcome, Mark. Everybody can see you now.
Yeah.
So you are actually are you in Los Angeles? Where are you at?
Van Nuys, California, which is a suburb of Los Angeles.
Of course. And so we know each other from years of going to film conferences and me visiting you at UCLA and us just liking certain types of films in general. Tell me what you do now and where you do it.
Well, I'm the John H. Mitchell television archivist for the UCLA Film and Television Archive, and my job entails acquisitions, curatorial work, inventory sometimes, cataloging sometimes, and sometimes exhibition, working with all areas of the archive to, as much as possible, share the collection in ways that we can do ethically and legally. And I see one of the people watching on Facebook is Eli Savada, who's somebody who we turn to quite a bit.
Oh, yes.
Guy. Copyright questions. Hi, Eli.
Yeah, he's been joining us for a while, and I'm happy that he's there. We love Eli. So we talked via Facebook messaging to try to pick and choose what were the films that you would like for me to show from my collection. And one of the things that you said is, some 70s PSAs, public service announcements. So tell me why. I mean, you haven't seen these, but you were just like, yeah, just put some public service announcements on there. So why did you want to see those?
Well, you and I are about the same age, and growing up in the 70s, PSAs were the way that you were introduced to like the ills of society. And the Ad Council, which is not a government agency, but kind of like an ad hoc consortium of major advertising agencies that contribute work pro bono to create this public service advertising. They actually came out of like World War II. So loose lips sink ships and all that kind of propaganda for the public good was like the origins of the Ad Council. And so they brought that into the post-war problems. So in the 70s, you would see grim commercials in the middle of the night if you had, snuck up as a kid to watch You Bet Your Life. And I used to watch You Bet Your Life on KTLA in LA before Fractured Flickers. And in between would be these PSAs, and all of a sudden there would be, this 60-second spot about people in East Germany that were trying to get news, and they're running through dark alleys, and it used to really scare you and introduce you to concepts and things that you didn't understand. Sometimes the first time you became aware of these problems. So PSAs are really, commercials are some of the most expensive films made per minute, and PSAs are just this really condensed information that kind of hit you, especially in the 70s. They were very hard hitting. They were trying to make an impact. So they would really kind of like hit you like a baseball bat with like a really hard reality. So one of the ones you might remember, this is a little later from the 80s, but, drinking and driving kills a friendship. And then there's two skeleton hands, like doing a toast with beer steins that like break, that shatter, things like that. And as a little kid in the 70s, you wouldn't be able to sleep after you saw one of those things. So those are that big impression.
Okay. Well, so these PSAs have some celebrities, some 70s celebrities in them, and some sports stars. And I think one of them is definitely about seatbelts, and some of them might be about customs. I don't know. We'll watch. All right, here we go.
I'm looking for the first time.
Yeah,
Yes.
So here's some 70s PSAs. Enjoy.
My babies take some hard licks out there, but I have a law that helps keep them free of injury. Nobody goes on this field without proper safety equipment.
Right, Coach.
Here's another one of my babies. I take care of him with a child restraint system. Protect your baby. Use a child restraint system.
This is a dummy in the front seat of a car going 30 miles an hour.
Watch what happens when the car stops. Now the dummy's wearing a lap belt. And now, with lap and shoulder belts. See the difference? We thought these films might help you decide what to do the next time you get in your car. Well, we know safety belts are a real headache, but look at it this way. Your headache could be a lot worse.
Some people believe it's better to get thrown clear in a car crash. But at 30 miles per hour, that's the speed you will be doing when you hit the concrete, or a lighting pole, or maybe you're just lying there, stunned in the road. No, the best place to be in a car crash is in the car with your safety belts buckled to hold you there. If you're not wearing a safety belt, what's holding you back? When you're traveling along the road in your car at 30 miles per hour and you crash around too, and you get hurt by the steering wheel or the windshield. But if you wear safety belts, they restrain your movement inside the car and reduce your chances of serious injury by 70%. Think about it. If you're not wearing a safety belt, what's holding you back?
Hi, I'm Artie Johnson, and this is Travel Pack, a free kit of useful material the U.S. Customs Service has put together to help make your overseas travel and return as simple as possible. Your Travel Pack has a declaration form. This has to be completed before you can return through customs. So take the declaration with you on vacation, fill it out as you shop. Now write to this address or pick one up from your local travel agent. That's Travel Pack, U.S. Customs Service, Washington, D.C., 20229. Get one.
Hi, I'm Charlene Tilton. Whether your next home is a ranch near Dallas, or a condominium apartment, or some other kind of home, it will probably be the largest investment of your lifetime. That's why you should remember precautions before you buy. This free booklet from the American Land Title Association contains information on home selection, financing, purchasing, closing, and land title protection. Write for it.
Hi, Ron Carey here. As one who's concerned with upward mobility, I have pondered the complexities of home buying, which is a little scary these days. But my confusion no longer exists. This free booklet from the American Land Title Association helped me open the door to understanding such things like home selection, financing, title insurance, and closing costs. Why not write for your free copy now?
Hi, I'm Steve Canaley. Buying a home is mighty important for a lot of us, whether it's a ranch outside of Dallas or a condo in the city. Whatever kind of home's on your shopping list, remember you have an interest to protect. Before you sign a home purchase contract, learn about title insurance and other precautions. Write the American Land Title Association for this free booklet. You'll be doing yourself a favor.
This is called a Travel Pack, a free kit of useful material that the U.S. Customs Service has put together to help you, especially when you get ready to bring yourself and your foreign purchases back to the U.S. Before you leave the country, get your free Travel Pack with the Customs Declaration. Fill it out while you're there. Write Travel Pack, U.S. Customs Service, Washington, D.C., 20229, or ask your own travel agent.
People who work for you are a team, just like the Dodgers. When you hire a blinded veteran, you make a qualified, trained employee a team member who'll go to bat for you. Reliable, enthusiastic, available, that's a blinded veteran. Ask any U.S. Labor Department office or write the Blinded Veterans Association, Washington, D.C. On the ball. That's how you blinded veterans can be, especially with retraining for a good job. We can help. The Blinded Veterans Association or the U.S. Department of Labor office.
All right, so It was totally random. There was some that pumpkin footage was pretty horrifying, but
something to think about.
A lot about paperwork. A lot of PSAs about paperwork. Filling out your customs form, making sure that you have your title cleared correctly. Yeah, I guess that was a problem.
Yeah, send away for the pamphlet today.
So, you have a television archive. Do you have any public service announcements in the archive?
We do. We have tens of thousands of commercials, and not as many PSAs as I would like, but I mean, there are quite a number of PSAs. And, usually the commercials in the collection tend to be compilations for different competitions,
like Clio.
Clio and things like that, or International Advertising Association awards. So they're sometimes embedded within reels of other commercials, and many of those were cataloged a long time ago. So for many of them, there isn't a lot of metadata, and it isn't until you actually get to pull it and take a look at it to find out really what it is. But it's interesting if you just go on YouTube how many PSAs you can find. Just like you have so many reels of PSAs, it's lucky that they've survived. They're really little time capsules of the period that they were made. They tell you what people were worried about at the time that they were made. So they're really important in that way.
Right. Yeah. So on that note about the compilations for commercial competitions, we did a bunch of scanning work for the Indiana University because they have the Clio collection. And so they've been slowly putting stuff online that we've been digitizing. A bunch of really fascinating ice cream commercials and, of course, cigarette commercials and just really fascinating stuff. I might try to find a link and put that in the comments. But yeah, they've been. It's really fascinating to see all these commercials from those different times and the PSAs, of course. So one of the first things that you asked me a long time ago was about this next film, if I had it in my collection, Protection in the Nuclear Age. Why has this film stuck with you? How did you see it? Tell me more.
Okay, so during the 1980s, there was a real kind of renewed threat with the Cold War with Reagan and the Soviet Union of nuclear war, and it was really kind of heavy on everyone's minds. In fact, I remember as a kid going to Crown Books, which was like a really popular bookseller out here on the West Coast, and picking up a little mass market paperback called Nuclear War, What's in It for You? And it broke down in detail, where the bombs were going to hit, what was going to happen. It was a real kind of frightening time.
Sure.
And this film, one day, randomly watching TV at a friend's house, there was some anti-nuclear fundraiser on public television, like a local public television station, and we had really bad reception. But we were, with rabbit ears, bringing in this film, and this is a really shocking film. So one of the highlights of this film is there's a part where they tell you if you don't have access to a fallout shelter, you can dig a hole outside and take a door off of one of your rooms and lay in the hole outside and pull a door from your house over the top of the hole. That was one of the things we were going to do. So this film always stuck with me. And so I contacted you, and of course you had it. And it's, once you see this, you'll never forget it. And it has a very stylized kind of graphic style of animation that is a way of kind of disembodying the whole problem.
Right.
And so you're disassociating. It's these little cartoon characters that are kind of faceless. They're these little silhouettes. So it's just something really gloomy and scary about this, as you would expect with the topic being
right.
Nuclear war.
All right, well, let's watch Protection in the Nuclear Age. And if people have questions for Mark about some of the things that we've been watching today, mention them in the comments and we'll ask. All right, here we go.
All right. Sorry for everyone having to see this scary film.
We live in a world of tension and conflict. And peace, even where it does exist, does so without guarantees for tomorrow. We must therefore face the hard reality that someday a nuclear attack against the United States could occur. And equally important, we must also realize that horrifying as that prospect may seem, destructive as such an attack might be, we can survive. It would not mean the end of the world, the end of our nation. And you can greatly improve your own chances of survival if you remember these facts about protection in the nuclear age. Three things to remember. In time of emergency, our government and many, many others around the world will be doing everything in their power to keep the peace. Second, you'll probably have some time to prepare. Of course, attack could come by surprise, but more likely, there would be a time of growing international tension with all its signs and warnings, lasting days, perhaps even weeks, giving you time for some preparations. Third, wherever we live, we're all inclined to think of our own hometown as target number one. But this is a very big country, with many cities, industries, military bases. And Defense Department studies show that even under the heaviest possible attack, less than 5% of our entire land area would be affected by blast and heat from nuclear weapons. Of course, that 5% contains a large percentage of our population. But even in these high-risk areas, if there's sufficient time to permit evacuation, many millions of lives could be saved. The other 95% of our land would escape untouched, except possibly by radioactive fallout. Now, here are things you need to know. First, the warning signals. There are two of them, and it's important that you know the difference. The attention or alert signal is used for peacetime emergencies, tornado and hurricane warnings, industrial explosions, other immediate threats to your safety. The signal is a long, steady blast on the civil defense sirens or other warning devices. It means turn on your radio or television set. Your local authorities have a peacetime emergency message for you. The attack warning signal is a 3 to 5 minute wavering sound on the sirens, or a series of short blasts on whistles or horns. This signal has only one meaning. An actual enemy attack against the United States has been detected. Don't pick up the phone to find out what's happening. The lines need to be kept clear for official emergency use. Don't wait. If you're at work or in school, take cover in the basement or an inner corridor. At home, go to your basement or fallout shelter, or find protection under the stairs. Take a battery-powered radio with you. Then tune to your local emergency broadcast station for news and official instructions.
Here are the official instructions. You must take cover immediately.
When a nuclear weapon explodes, 4 things happen. First, a blinding flash of light. Next, a searing wave of heat shooting out from the nuclear fireball. Then, the blast wave, carrying dangerous debris. And finally, if the burst has occurred at or near ground level, there soon will be radioactive fallout dropping from that mushroom cloud. Whatever you do, don't look at the flash. It can blind you. Instead, take cover immediately. Behind a tree, or a wall. In the shelter of a ditch, curl up in a ball and cover your head with hands and arms. Stay there till both the heat and the blast waves have passed. If your home is in an area where the heat wave has started small fires, use the next few minutes to put them out. Prevent them from growing into big ones. Then, shut off your main water valve. You'll have at least 30 minutes to do all this before radioactive fallout starts coming down. When a nuclear weapon explodes on or near the ground, tons of dirt and debris are pulverized and carried up into the mushroom cloud, vaporized by intense heat, then condensed into millions of tiny particles of fallout, no bigger than grains of salt or sand. Spread by high-altitude winds, fallout can blanket wide areas. And wherever it falls, it spells danger. The tiny particles emit invisible gamma rays, much like X-rays. And if your body absorbs too much of this radiation, it can cause sickness or death. It's not contagious. You can safely treat a victim of radiation sickness without fear of catching it. The one thing that can make you a victim is direct exposure to fallout. And you do have defenses against it. Mass, distance, and time. Mass means thick, heavy, dense materials to shield you and screen out most of the radiation. Like 16 inches of brick, 12 inches of concrete, or concrete block filled with sand, even 2 feet of packed earth. Your second defense is distance. The farther you are from the source of radiation, the fallout settled on the roof and ground, the safer you'll be. In large buildings of heavy construction, both the basement and the inner corridors upstairs offer good protection from radiation. They combine both mass and distance. And finally, there's time. Luckily, radioactivity from fallout weakens very rapidly. In fact, 7 hours after the blast, the level of radioactivity will drop a full 90%. After 2 days, 99% of the radioactivity is gone. And after 2 weeks, only 0.1% is left. In short, time is your ally. With protection, you can wait it out. If attack seems threatened, there are 3 kinds of protection. 1, public shelter. 2, home shelter. And 3, relocation. 1. Go to the nearest public fallout shelter. Wherever you see these black and yellow fallout shelter signs. There are more than enough public shelters to shield our whole population if they were perfectly distributed. Unfortunately, they're not. If the nearest public shelter is too far away, stay home and find shelter there. If you have a home fallout shelter in your basement, fine. If not, we'll tell you later how to improvise some fallout protection. For people who live in the high-risk areas, a third defense is possible if there is time. Temporary relocation. In a nuclear attack, the greatest dangers would be blast and fire in the target areas, which means the people most threatened would be those living or working near our missile sites, near strategic military bases, and near some of our larger centers of industry. The simplest way to save them is to move them out to small towns and rural areas where the only likely danger is fallout. So the federal government, in cooperation with state and local governments, is now working on detailed plans for temporary relocation of these high-risk areas if crisis ever threatens. It is a difficult and complex problem, requiring much planning. But it is possible. After all, we relocate millions of workers from our big cities every evening rush hour. We have moved hundreds of thousands to safety in time of hurricane or flood. And in a case like this, it could save as many as 100 million lives.
Evacuation centers.
It would be an orderly, controlled evacuation. Your own local authorities will give detailed instructions through radio, television, and the press, telling you what necessities to take along, what arrangements have been made for transportation, by bus, train, or private car, where you will find safety in the small town or rural host areas, and what routes to follow to get there. When you arrive, reception centers will be there to welcome you and assign you temporary housing. And special arrangements will be made to upgrade the local level of fallout protection in case the crisis should be followed by attack. In fact, we need fallout protection in place everywhere, for there's no telling where it may be needed. But even if you're unable to reach a shelter, you can still improvise some protection. Set up a strong table or workbench in the corner that's most below ground level and away from windows. Cover the top with as much heavy materials as it will safely hold: doors, bricks, flagstones, books. Wall it in with heavy bookcases, chests of drawers. Then fill the drawers with earth or sand for added shielding. If your house is built on a slab foundation, use the concrete floor for shelter. Unless the soil's too rocky or a high water table prevents, dig a trench alongside the house. Tunnel under the footing and up, digging out a shelter under the concrete slab just big enough to contain your family. Shore up the slab with timber if need be, and slant some heavy doors covered with soil over the outside trench for added protection from fallout and rain. Or you can dig an L-shaped trench in your yard, about 4 feet deep and 3 feet wide. Make the longer side of the L big enough to accommodate your family. The shorter leg will serve as the entrance. Shore up the sides of the trench for safety. Cover it with house doors or heavy timbers. Then pile 2 feet of earth on top for protection. In rural areas, excellent fallout shelters can be found in natural caves, tunnels, mines with horizontal shafts, and storm or root cellars. Cover the cellar with a foot or two of earth. Then shield the entrance with brick or block to protect you from radiation. Of course, the best home protection of all would be a basement fallout shelter, built before any crisis occurs. Your local civil defense director can supply the plans. With a little time, some money for materials, and do-it-yourself labor, you can supply the rest. Wherever you are, you'll need emergency supplies. If fallout in your area is light, you may be in shelter only a few days. But to be on the safe side, store enough pre-cooked, canned, or packaged food, plus special foods for the baby, diet foods for the sick and elderly, and enough water to last you, if necessary, for a week or more. Water's the most important. You'll need at least a quart, better yet a gallon, for each person, for each day. Store it in tightly sealed glass or plastic bottles. You can also use the bottled or canned beverages, fruit and vegetable juices, and milk from your refrigerator. Then there's your hot water tank. Water in the flush tanks, not the bowls of the toilets. And water trapped in the house piping system. Close off the main valve to keep that precious water from draining away into the outside mains. Turn on the faucet located at the highest point in the building to let some air into the system. Then, drain water as needed from the lowest point. Don't forget the sanitation supplies. A metal container with a tight lid for an emergency toilet, and toilet tissues. A garbage can for wastes. Plastic liners and disinfectants. Medicines and first aid supplies. Blankets and bedding. Extra clothing and underwear. Soap, towels, personal hygiene items. Flashlight and candles. Fire extinguisher and buckets of sand. And a battery-powered radio with extra batteries so you can receive news and official instructions. If you're going to a public fallout shelter, bring as much water and ready-to-eat food as possible. Extra clothing, blankets, a flashlight, special medicines, and personal hygiene items. If you're being moved to safety from a high-risk area, pack all the other basic necessities your family takes when going on a trip, plus blankets, bedding, special medicines. For your own protection, remember these basic facts. First, the attack warning signal. A 3 to 5 minute wavering sound on the sirens, or short blasts on whistles or horns. Next, the effects of a nuclear explosion. A blinding flash, the heat wave, then the following blast wave, and finally, radioactive fallout. Remember your 3 defenses against fallout. Mass. Thick, heavy, dense materials to shield you from the radiation from fallout. Distance. The farther you are from the fallout that settled on the roof and the ground, the safer you'll be. And time. Radioactivity does weaken rapidly. With shelter, you can wait it out. Take a battery-powered radio with you, then tune to your local emergency broadcast station.
But it is not
They'll
yet
tell you when it's safe to come out. Don't forget spare batteries for your radio. Remember, too, that you have 3 choices. 1, to go to a public fallout shelter. Know where the nearest one is. To your office, your home, your children's school. Be prepared to take along food, water, the other necessities we've mentioned. If you decide to take shelter at home, know how to improvise and improve your protection there. And do lay in enough supplies. Relocation. If you live in a high-risk area, your local authorities may ask you to move to safety in the small town or rural areas. Be sure you know their emergency plan, so you'll know exactly where to go and what to do. Whatever the choice, take time now to make your own family protection plan. Know what you'll need. Make your plan practical. And make sure each member of the family knows exactly what to do if crisis ever comes. Don't wait till you need it. That's too late. Do it now. The Earth from space can seem a fair and pleasant place. And perhaps through strength and unceasing efforts to settle international disputes by peaceful means, we'll manage to keep it that way. The greatest danger is hopelessness, the fear that nuclear attack would mean the end of our world. So why not just give up, lie down, and die? That idea could bring senseless and useless death to many. For protection is possible. And your own chances of survival will be much greater if you remember these facts about protection in the nuclear age.
Wow. Blue people, Mark.
Yeah, everyone who can't sleep tonight, I apologize.
Especially
as you just said, it's timeless in a way that's a little bit disconcerting.
I like the blue person on the radio that had infrared rays coming out of his mouth. It was almost like somebody commented as like a bunch of superheroes with weird mutation. But so some people asked some questions about public service announcements from the previous. Somebody asked about the Words of Unity PSAs, of which I have a couple, and I put links on the in the comments.
I don't recall that.
Okay.
I don't recall that.
What about so somebody else asked about the Action Corps.
Yeah, I remember those. Those had those were animated, and they had the BC Comics characters.
Oh, really? Okay.
From your Sunday Funnies, and I'm pretty sure Action was something like AmeriCorps or Vista. It was like a domestic Peace Corps type of thing.
Right.
I believe.
Yeah. I mean, I have one that talks about working in urban areas to help, and yes, it does have that kind of that vibe to it. And so this film, Protection in the Nuclear Age, it's fascinating. It came out around the time, as you were saying, that there was a lot of Cold War tension, and films were coming out about like the day after. but there was a film that came out that I saw. It was called The Late Great Planet Earth, that traumatized me beyond belief, like to the point where I saw it. I might have been 12 or 13, and I ran out of the theater crying and freaking out because it portrayed what was going to happen in a nuclear holocaust. And I had nightmares for a month. I had to sleep with my parents the first night because I was so freaked out. And it was years later, after I started collecting films, that I realized who made or helped make this film, Ralph Forsberg. And thanks to you, I actually met Ralph Forsberg. So tell me a little bit about your dealings with Ralph and what you did for him.
Sure. Well, getting to know Rolf was a really special thing. And it kind of happened in a weird way. And it's all thanks to Orphan Film Symposium in one way or another. But kind of the condensed version is I had presented on a strange religious program, Insight at Orphans, that we're going to talk about later. And from there, a journalist contacted me looking for a very bizarre film that he thought was an insight. And so we were searching for this together. And the film he was looking for, which is a whole other episode of AV Geeks, was not an insight. And that research that we did together, and the journalist was Paul Collum, led us to Rolf Forsberg. And he had tracked down Rolf in Chicago. And I looked at his canon of films. And at this time, this was like 2003, 2004, his films weren't really on the internet and they weren't really around. But Paul had tracked him down in Chicago, but he also lived here in LA. And so we arranged to have dinner with him, to take him out to dinner. And so we took him out to dinner and we became familiar with his canon of, really outre religious films that he did for major religious organizations. And he had some of these in his garage, so I was lucky to bring a number of those into the UCLA Film and Television Archive. And one of them that we're going to look at today is Parable, which is a film he made for the 1964 World's Fair. And it created all kinds of outrage and protests in advance of the 64 World's Fair. It was made for the New York City Protestant Council of Churches for their pavilion at the World's Fair. But it was an allegory, and the Christ figure in this allegory is a mime. And so there was many protests in advance of the film even being screened that, you're showing Christ as a clown. And there was threats of a religious person with Con Ed was going to shut down power at the pavilion so they couldn't screen it. Another religious leader said that he was going to bring a shotgun and shoot the screen if they tried to screen it. And what ended up happening was it ended up being like one of the most popular film attractions at the fair that year. So getting to know Rolf was really fun. And then we got to, you came out for a visit to LA and we got to go to his house and I introduced you to him. We had a nice chat.
Yeah, it was soothing for me to confront this person. I mean, he was the kindest man. To confront him about Late Great Planet Earth, in which I found out he didn't actually do the parts that scared me. He kind of did the recreations of the Book of Revelations. It was the other parts of it, the more used a lot of B-roll that freaked me out. But also, so we showed another one of his films, Stalked, here on the streaming thing a couple of weeks ago, and it baffled a lot of people. And that's how I kind of found him, is that I had Stalked and I had included it on a DVD compilation, and I was doing research to try to figure out who this filmmaker was, because that is another confounding portrayal of Jesus, which is this Dutch man that is hounding this man, stalking this man in the streets of Amsterdam. And so Ralph's portrayal of Jesus has always been this amazingly controversial thing.
That's a really complex film with, as you know, like really high production value. And it's interesting because major religious organizations at this time are trying to do anything to hold on to constituents and bring new people into the tent because, your modern world is much more secular and people are kind of turning away from traditional religion. So they would give someone like Rolf, who was really an experimental filmmaker. Oh, yeah. And he was a student of the world's religions and a world traveler. But personally, he was more of a Buddhist, and he was much more interested in just telling super spiritually strange stories, which was just different how he was when you would talk to him. He was a very deep person, but he wasn't, a maniac. When you watch these films, he has a film, Ant Keeper, that basically, is like another parable that features micro photography of, ant colonies.
Right.
So he has a whole canon of films they're basically like, celluloid nightmares.
Yeah. All right, well, let's watch Parable, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, and then we'll talk about Insight. Insight is the, what would you describe, the Twilight Zone for Catholics?
Exactly. Yeah.
All right.
And anyone who's watching all of these films with us today, none of you people are going to sleep tonight.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah. It's Friday night. What do you got to do? All right, here we go. Here's Parable.
In the Gospels, Jesus teaches us by using parables. Through them comes God's message in simple story form. Today, a parable might begin like this. Once there was a great circus. In the march of nations and peoples, a great circus parade, in which some were participants, some merely spectators. A parade in which human beings seldom knew one another or cared for one another. And into this great circus of life came a man who dared to be different.
Sorry, I lost track. Apologize for that. Mark, we were talking at length about this film and about our dealings with Ralph. I seem to remember I think I tried to ask him about what was the significance of the different colored hoodies of the kids. And did we ever get really an answer for that?
No. I mean, the production design of this film is incredible. And he was able to get those circus wagons from a circus museum. And so they put a lot of effort into the production design, but the costuming, whatever metaphors those are meant to represent, those are beyond me.
And didn't we try to ask him also about the racial identity of the Jesus mime?
I don't think so. That I don't remember. But of course, there's the important scene in the beginning that's, where he comes to the aid of the African-American gentleman that's kind of being tormented. So, I mean, that was a really important part of the film. And for 64, that was something that, the Lutherans definitely wanted to, or the Protestants wanted to convey also, that everybody was kind of welcome.
Right. So you were talking about this film in context with his other films about the nightmare quality of it. And a lot of people commented on that. Could you talk more about?
Well, I mean, that's the one. I mean, there's commonality among Rolf's films. And, there's actually a great DVD out now that has 4 of these films, 4 of his best films that you can easily find via Amazon or anywhere else. And then you have stocked available through your store. But the commonality in all of these films is that there's, they really read more like, celluloid nightmares than any kind. There isn't really a strong narrative to any of these films. They're really more impressionistic, expressionistic, and they're more. The intent is more to convey a mood,
right,
than any kind of like religious tract or doctrine. They're just something for Rolf. This was a way of expressing his inner thoughts in a way that really tapped into the subconscious. I think there's a real subconscious quality to these.
So the subtle theme to almost everything that you've picked is late night nightmare, or what is this weird thing that is mildly traumatizing me psychically. So let's use this as a lead-in to talk about Insight. Tell me about Insight.
Well, this is a pretty cool long story, but as a kid, I used to watch this television show Insight. It was a religious anthology that was shot on videotape, and it was headed by a Catholic priest who was in the Paulist order, and his name was Elwood Kaiser. And the Paulists were charged with kind of reaching people outside of the church. So he lectures at UCLA in the 60s that were really more humanist than religious. And they got popular, so they decided to try to bring it to TV. And those were originally lectures, and they didn't really catch on as much. I think my internet connection might be going bad for a second. And so it instead became an anthology. And he was able to get good stars and good writers. So Michael Crichton wrote some episodes. Rod Serling wrote an episode. William Peter Blatty of The Exorcist wrote some episodes. He had stars like Flip Wilson, Irene Dunn, Ida Lupino. All these people did this work gratis. And there were these little mini morality dramas that used to run free on stations, often at midnight. So after the Northridge earthquake, there was this was in the 90s, there was a very bad aftershock, and I woke up at 3 a.m. one morning with that aftershock and turned on the TV to make sure we weren't having another big earthquake. And on a local station, they were rerunning a really grim episode of Insight. And I had kind of forgotten about the show. So that made an impression. So I started taping them at 3 and 4 a.m. in the morning in the 90s. We were still running them locally. And then in the early 2000s, I'm working at the archive at UCLA, and I said to myself, I wonder whatever happened to that. And there was very little on the internet at that time about the show. So I cold called the Paulist Productions that made the show and asked them, whatever happened to your show? And they said, well, we have them all. And they're in our basement, in our headquarters in Thelma Todd's old speakeasy on PCH. And we're really worried about them. And I said, well, we can help. And so our television archivist at the time, Dan Einstein, and I went down there as soon as we could, and we picked up 4 vanfuls of material, including 2-inch original masters where they survived, 1-inch tapes, 3/4-inch tapes, 16 circulation prints, and we got every episode that survived. Some didn't. They had done over 300 episodes. And the best of the episodes are a lot like Parable, maybe not the same production value because they were shot really cheap on videotape. But the idea of the show was to get people thinking about things, social problems, bettering yourself, escaping from things like alcoholism or drug abuse. And because it was, an offshoot of the Catholics, sometimes they touched on things like promiscuity or sex out of marriage, things like that. But for the most part, it was pretty much a liberal show where they would tackle things like the death penalty that regular TV really shied away from.
Nice. And so what we'll do is because this is a longer episode, this is 30 minutes. We will say thank you and goodbye to Mark, and we'll just kind of let this episode run. Tell me about this one, Hitman. You said that this is one of your favorite ones, and this is one that we have in our collection.
One of my favorite episodes. It's directed by Norman Lloyd, and Norman Lloyd was a protege of Hitchcock. Is still alive. He's 105 years old. He directed a lot of great TV in the 70s for KCT, anthology television. And this also has one of my favorite character actors in it, John Anderson, who you'll recognize from The Outer Limits, Twilight Zone, and every 70s TV show. He was just a fantastic actor. And it in a very kind of even-keeled way tackles the story of the death penalty through a person who works at a place like San Quentin and is charged with executing people. I don't really want to say too much more than that, but you'll recognize a lot of people in the cast, and it's just a really well done, one-room stage production done on videotape.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mark, for joining us. What we'll do is, you said that you have some of these other Inside episodes and things streaming at UCLA's site, and so what we'll do is we'll put, I'll put links in there. For people on Facebook and on YouTube, so they can investigate more if this touches them. Thanks again, man. I hope you have a good weekend.
Thank you for being the Dick Cavett of AV.
The Dick Cavett of AV. I love Dick Cavett, so thank you so much for that.
He's favorite talk show host by a mile.
All right, so here's Hitman.
All right.
Take care, everybody. I'll say goodbye at the very end, but thanks for joining us, and thank you, Mark. Take care.
Thank you.
Buddy, do you happen to have an aspirin?
Sorry.
Attention. Attention all passengers. Due to low visibility, all aircraft have been grounded until further notice. All aircraft have been grounded. Thank you.
Oh, no. It's closed. Yep. What kind of an airport is this? A very small one. Boy, I love these late flights. The least I can do is offer you some coffee.
They're not even offering the late flight.
What are you talking about? Look out the window. Can't see anything except the fog.
All flights are grounded. You didn't hear the announcement?
No, is that what they were mumbling? I can never understand those clowns. So how long is the delay?
Till the fog lifts. Could be all night.
All night? Well, in that case, the bar is open.
Could that possibly be brandy?
No, that's scotch. 21-year-old scotch.
Oh, well, I guess I'll have to make do.
Hi, Joe Riley.
Harriet Peters.
Scotch. Hi, Joe Riley. Booth. Are we all grabbing that flight to Chicago? Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
Well, here's a toast to Chicago.
And to leaving this bird.
What do you have against this fair city?
Oh, it was a dry well for me. I'm a reporter for a wire service. What do you do?
I teach.
High school?
College. I'm an ethics professor.
Ethics? Nice cut and dried subject. What do they learn?
Mostly to hate essay exams.
Well, unlike you two, I do honest work.
Oh, let me see. You're a brain surgeon.
No, bigger than that. I'm a shoe salesman. You meet a lot of people with no brains, but never with no shoes.
Well, with an august body such as this, and a bottle of 21-year-old scotch, we ought to be able to solve half the problems of the universe. And what do you do?
For a living,
Mm-hmm.
I kill people.
You kill people?
Yeah.
You mean a hitman?
Like, bang, bang, you're dead?
How it's done depends. Results the same.
Fascinating.
Say, are you on a job right now?
Might say that, yeah. Going somewhere, Professor? Yes, I'm not going to listen to any more of this. Don't you like the company here? That's right. Why don't you take a walk, Professor? Are you threatening me? Why would I threaten you?
Hey, Professor, come on, take it easy.
Maybe he's threatening all of us. What motivates a man like you? Why do you kill?
It's a job. Like any other job. Do it for the money.
You enjoy it?
Not really. Somebody has to do it. 8,000 years of civilization. Look how far we've come. Can still produce primitives like that. You got another one of those?
Yes, sure. Come on. The guy's sitting right over there, and you're talking as if he's a laboratory rat or something.
Well, does that bother you? Can I talk about you as though you were a laboratory rat or something?
Hey, that professor's kind of high.
Don't apologize for me, Riley. I just don't like fraternizing with murderers. I don't like fraternizing with a hypocrite.
Hey, come on, Professor. What, are you got a death wish? Look, that was crazy what you did.
Like ice. True professional, wouldn't you say?
Will you, Professor?
I'll say one thing for you. You're probably good at your job. You got it all planned out, haven't you? You know exactly how and when you're going to do it. To the minute.
Are we? I mean, am I on your list?
No.
I'll drink to that.
You're drinking to another man's death?
No, I'm not. I'm just drinking.
So killing's all right as long as you're not the one who's getting it.
This person you're going to kill, what's he done?
Does it matter?
Did he kill anybody?
What are you driving at?
I'm just trying to figure out how the system works. See, most paid killers work for the mob. They have their own set of laws.
The law of the jungle.
An eye for an eye.
Surely you're not condoning this.
I don't condone it, I don't condemn it. I just report it.
But who decides who dies? I mean, where's the responsibility?
Hey, why is everybody getting so upset around here?
Haven't you been listening? Or does your world end when you get above the laces?
Well, wait a minute. Don't climb on my back.
Why not? He's going to kill somebody tomorrow, and you shrug it off because it isn't you. And you say maybe the victim has it coming. Doesn't either one of you have a little bit of a problem with that?
Yeah, I got a problem with that. I also got a house payment I can't make. I got a kid who's on drugs. I need some root canal work. I got a lot of problems. You want to guess where he fits on my list?
Nobly put.
Now, wait a minute. Wait a minute, mister. Now, listen, I'm not trying to reform the world. I'm just trying to cope, okay? And if this guy decides to blow somebody away, there's nothing I can do about it.
Except read a lurid account of it in the papers. So much for the sanctity of human life. Every great philosopher, as well as each one of the world's great religions, says that human life, no matter what its form, is sacred. Saint or demon, every human being has the right to life, and nobody has the right to take it away.
Violin music, please. Turn the other cheek. Love your enemy.
Each killing, each act of violence becomes the motive for the next one. How do we break the chain?
Maybe you don't. Maybe you just duck when violence comes your way.
You're very cynical.
I'm just a realist. I have no love for that character either. But he's not the one you go after. It's the people who hire him.
I wondered when you were going to get around to that. Who does hire you?
You don't have to name names.
I don't mind naming names.
Who, then?
You.
Me?
All of you. I work for the government, state prison. I'm an executioner.
For God's sake. How about that? I had a feeling you weren't such a bad guy.
You could have told us that in the beginning.
I told you I killed people. You presumed I was a murderer.
What was the point in stringing us along?
When I tell people what I do straight out, they treat me like poison.
Who says you're not?
The state. Citizens of the state. You.
Not me.
Hey, come on, lighten up. He's on our side.
Speak for yourself.
Wait a minute. Are you against capital punishment?
That's right.
I don't understand. 5 minutes ago, killing didn't seem to bother you that much.
I was simply acknowledging the reality of the world about me. Now we're talking about the state.
What's the difference?
By executing the criminal, the state is sanctioning premeditated killing, punishing the crime by committing it. The state should be above revenge.
I guess I can go along with that. At least you and the professor got something you can agree on.
Not on that.
Now what?
Revenge isn't necessarily involved at all. Justice is.
Wait a minute. Are you for capital punishment?
Under certain conditions.
What the hell is going on here?
What conditions?
I'd rather not discuss it.
What's the matter, Professor? I thought you were such a believer in the sanctity of human life. Now you want an eye for an eye. Which is it?
I could ask you the same question.
I've already answered it.
You've said that you can accept slaughter in the streets, but not formal execution based on due process. I think you've slipped a cog in there.
Maybe you just hate lady reporters.
Nothing personal. I just think you're inconsistent and irrational.
I think it is personal. But not with me. With you.
You're an analyst, too?
Just explain your little flip-flop.
It's very simple. There are certain crimes for which one forfeits the right to live.
And to use your words, who decides what those crimes are? You? Me? Riley? Or maybe our executioner friend?
Isn't that what the courts are supposed to decide?
It's still people judging people.
Yeah, but they got the jurisdiction. They're the experts, right?
Let's just drop it.
I don't want to drop it. How many people do you have on death row right now?
12.
Any blacks?
7.
Latinos?
3.
Whites?
2.
And how many of them are wealthy or even middle income?
0.
And that's my point. No matter what crime you think someone should die for, the only people who will be convicted are the ones who can't afford a good lawyer.
What about all the murders that don't take place just because there's capital punishment?
You actually believe capital punishment is a deterrent to potential murderer?
I think it's only logical.
Well, let me see now. Before I kill this guy, I better look it up in the law books and see just what the penalty is. Oh, my, capital punishment. Well, maybe I'll just kick his teeth in instead. Is that what you're trying to tell me?
You're oversimplifying.
I am trying to show you that most murders are committed in the heat of the moment with not a thought of the consequences. So therefore, deterrence doesn't even apply.
But if capital punishment deters just one murder, it does apply.
And if it kills just one innocent person, it should be banned. We're right back where we started.
I'm certain the facts are going to prove I'm right.
All the evidence I've seen doesn't point your way. Japan, which has no capital punishment and a much denser population, has about 1/9 the homicides of the United States.
What does that mean? We ought to all wear kimonos?
What do you think?
There's a deterrent. It isn't capital punishment.
The prison system.
That's the way it is, the way it should be.
I absolutely agree with you. We create more criminals than we reform. But even if we made all the necessary changes in the system, the professor here would still opt for capital punishment. And I want to know why.
Why can't we just leave this whole thing alone?
Oh, Riley, you know how reporters are. Snoop, snoop, snoop. What do you say, Professor?
What does it cost to keep a lifer in prison?
$20,000 a year.
Okay. So if we give a man a life sentence and keep him in jail, say, 40 years, we're talking about a minimum of $800,000.
Yeah, and that's my tax money, right?
Oh, that's not the worst of it. You take that same criminal, put him on death row, and keep him there until all his appeals run out, add up the court costs, and you've spent as much in, say, 2 years as you would have spent in 40. I wonder how many starving children that money might feed.
So you're saying it costs us more to kill them than to keep them?
Even if he stays for life.
But he doesn't. 10 years later, he's out on parole, and we got to deal with him all over again.
Not if he's rehabilitated.
But you just got through reminding us that they come out worse than they were when they went in.
All right. You're saying if lifers really got life, you'd be against capital punishment?
I don't know. No, I wouldn't.
Why not, Professor? Deterrence isn't the reason. Money isn't the reason. None of those logical things.
I said I don't want to get into it.
Why not? You afraid it'll show how biased you are? Just how unqualified you are to teach?
Two years ago, my wife and I, we just recently been married, both of us for the first time. A little unusual at our age, huh? We were driving north to Big Sur. We hadn't eaten, and we decided to have a picnic. So we stopped to buy the sandwich makings. Got in an argument about what to drink. I thought the occasion called for champagne, but Janet said no. That cost too much. Can you imagine? Our combined income had to be over $50,000 a year. Here we were arguing about a $12 bottle of champagne. There was this park. A state park. Redwoods. Beautiful. We found a secluded little spot. I opened the wine and she won the argument. We were two lovers together. Then a man entered the clearing. Said he was hungry. Well, Janet offered him a sandwich. He took her hand instead. She asked him to let go. He wouldn't. She screamed. I hit him. He let go of her. He was on me like a wild animal. He was young. 20 years younger than I. It was no match. While Janet screamed, he pounded me into a bloody pulp. I thought he was going to kill me, but somehow she intervened. Must have hit him with something. And he descended on her and... What's the phrase? Had his way with her. Finally, he beat her into unconsciousness. Went away whistling. A local park ranger found us eventually. I spent a week in the hospital.
What about your wife?
My wife. It was several weeks before Janet could feed herself, or dress herself, or even walk. But she doesn't speak. She doesn't recognize me. Every weekend I visit her. Every weekend's the same. She lies with her face to the wall. Sometimes she cries. But she'd never respond.
What happened to the guy?
Yes, the guy. He was arrested 2 months later for raping 3 elementary school children.
Was there a trial?
Oh, yes. And a conviction.
Where is he now?
In a state hospital for the criminally insane. I trust they're tending to all his needs.
Professor.
So, yes, I have let my emotions get into it. But would you please tell me, if you're a human being, how do you keep your emotions out of it?
Professor, I'm sorry.
What for? Isn't that your job?
I had no right to pry.
Why should that stop you? Question is, have you gone far enough? Aren't you curious whether I'm just trying to cover up my own guilt?
No.
Of course you are. Could I have stopped him? Did I fight back hard enough? What bothers me most? His crime or my conscience? Come on, Peters, go for it.
Riley was right. Let's drop it.
Oh, no. You wouldn't let me off the hook. Now, let's check out your little faults. Well, maybe you don't have any.
I'm ashamed for having put you through this. I can be persistent to a fault. All I can ask now is that you please accept my apology. I have to admit to you that if what happened to your wife had happened to me, I honestly don't know that I could disagree with you on this whole issue.
I feel the same way about it.
Both of you saying you'd throw the switch?
I would.
I guess I'm saying that I would have to think about it.
Well, think about it now. Because I've got to decide now what I'm going to do. This time I'm not going to do it alone. I want you to decide. I want you to vote.
You're asking us to take responsibility for what you do?
No, I'm asking you to take responsibility for what I do in your name. I pull the switch. You're the executioners.
You don't have to pull that switch.
No, you're right, I don't. You vote no, I don't get on that plane.
So what'll happen? They'll just call in another executioner, won't they?
Maybe. Maybe not.
Hey, you're laying a real heavy trip on us. I'm not sure I want to deal with this.
Yeah, why shouldn't you? I'm tired of being treated like a leper, when all I do is what the law tells me to do. Tired of people like you living your lives as though you had clean hands. I'll think about it. That's your cop-out. Tired of sharing your burden of confusion and guilt. Tired of these damn headaches.
What headache?
Every time, just before I'm going to do it, I can see in my mind what it's going to be like. I try to black it out. I get these great throbbing headaches, like my head is going to explode.
This guy you got to kill. What did he do?
What he did to helpless old people. It wasn't just rape either. It was murder, torture. To create a guy like this, you need experts. This guy had him. His parents. Both of them beat on him since before he could walk. Stick him in a closet and shut him up. Sometimes for days. Even set fire to him once. Oh, it's funny the kid should turn out to be a human time bomb. Nowhere along the line did he get a chance for any help. So now they're calling on me to fix him. Permanently. Any of you ever see an execution? It goes like this. You probably come in kicking and screaming, but it's no problem. Before guards. They'll get him into the chair. There'll be so much tension in his muscles that they'll have to force him into the sitting position. First thing we do is strap his ankles. Then his wrists. A thick, greasy leather belt goes around his waist. The metal comes down over his head. If he's ever going to get religion, he'll start praying his pants off now because there's a minute and a half to go. You can tell. The overhead fan goes on. It's to vent out the smell. Burning flesh. Doesn't work very well. Now the hood comes drops down over the prisoner's head. I go to the control panel. Warden gives me the nod. The man gets 2,000 volts. First jolt, his eyes bulge. The second one, they burst. And the third, his brains are boiling. We don't want to take any chances. We figure he just might not be reformed yet, so we hit him a fourth time, just for good measure. The whole thing takes about 2 minutes. Seems like 2 years. When it's over, the doctor gives the thing. Not a man anymore. Quick check. Pronounces it dead.
Passengers on Pace Airways Flight 196 to Chicago, please proceed to the departing gate for check-in and boarding. Pace Airways Flight 196 for Chicago, now checking in. This is your first boarding call. Thank you.
Time to vote.
I've got to get on that plane.
Not yet. It's a man's life in your hands. I'll make it easy on you. Secret ballot. Yes, I get on that plane. No, I don't. Three votes. Majority rules.
I still don't see what this is going to prove.
Gonna prove that you can't wash your hands of this thing. Come on, there's been a lot of talk about elevating ourselves out of the jungle, an eye for an eye, breaking the chain of command, the chain of violence. Which is it, folks? Vote. All abstains. Chopped out.
Happy Friday, everybody. Wow, yes, intense. Not every film I have is jokey. Some of them delve into dark serious subjects, and I appreciate you guys keeping and tuning in, and I appreciate Mark Quigley chiming in. Somebody commented that we look like brothers. We are certainly cut from the same cloth, having grown up around the same time, responding to the same delights and fears in popular culture, which is why we, I think, would hang out at conferences and sit and talk about the different things we experienced. And so thank you, Mark, for making these choices. They were all weird and unsettling and nightmarish. But if you want to see lighthearted stuff, there's other AV Geek shows that have been archived that you can watch at the AV Geeks. Also, 3,000 films are there. And then if you'd like to support what we do, Patreon is a wonderful place to do that. So we'll be back on Monday, starting week 9. And I very much appreciate you guys tuning in and your comments and sharing these things together. And I hope you guys are keeping safe and keeping sane, and getting out of the house a little bit, doing something for yourself, and, reach out to your friends and family, say hi. Now's a good time to do that. And thanks again, and we will see you soon. Take care.